we have allowed them to get away with so much that they can be bold enough to say to us, listen, I know that this problem exists, but I want you all to fix it for me. Are they at that table? Investigation, reduce spending. We don't really have a problem with it. We are all to blame. So says Jamaica's Education Minister, Dr. Dana Morris Dixon. She was speaking about Jamaica's declining results in the Caribbean Examination Council, CXC, and the Caribbean Secondary Education Certificate, CSEC. The Jamaica Observer, which carried the report, said that math scores rose slightly last year, but then the English scores had a slight decline. The decline in exam results has been an issue for some time, and even the Education Ministry has acknowledged this. So the question then is, why, having acknowledged that there is an issue, has the ministry not done enough to resolve it? Now, my first instinct when I read this was, why is the government doing what it usually does, which is shifting the blame for something that it is wholly responsible for? So then I read the minister's comment. Education is not just about the Ministry of Education. It is about every single person. And when we saw those results last year that all of Jamaica was very much upset about, the CXC results, we have to ask ourselves, how did we let this happen? Who is we? You're the Minister of Education. Not just the ministry, although the ministry has a big role to play, but all of us Jamaicans who allowed our schools and our children to fail in this way. The data has been there for a long time, showing that the outcomes are not what we want. So if you have had the data for, quote, a long time, what have you done to correct a problem that you are now acknowledging you've known about for a long time? What have you done? What we know that the ministry has done is allowed schools to continue on a path wherein they penalize children and make the learning environment more difficult. Case in point, we just spent the first 2 weeks of school reopening after the Christmas break trying to find out whose skirt is too long, whose hair is too high, and all these issues instead of focusing on the education of our children. It is not enough for the minister to say everybody has a role to play because everybody's role is not equal. The Ministry of Education has to communicate very clearly what the goals are that it wants to achieve and then lay out a clear path within which to achieve them. And I would argue that it first begins with being direct with these schools who are stifling the learning environment for children. The Education Ministry for too long has been playing this kind of role like it is just a passive observer and allowing schools and school boards to get away with creating an environment that is almost, I would say, abusive for children. Many of these schools act as if they're the final authority for everything regarding education. They want parents to get involved, but they want to dictate to parents how to get involved and what they can say or do with their own children. They want to dictate to the children how to express themselves, and the rules are rules, and we're preparing them for an environment out there wherein which the only thing it looks like you're preparing them for is for them to be passive people who agree with everything and will subject themselves to abuse in the workplace because that is what they are used to in the schools. The Jamaica Observer followed up that article with an editorial, and let me read snippets from the editorial because they were making a bit more sense than the minister's article. The Observer said, the minister needs to put her words into action. Government has to pledge to fund schools properly and invest in the human resources and technology needed to make education a national priority. This we can agree on, because the fundamental part of the problem is not that other segments of the society don't have a role. It's that the government refuses to take the lead role, which is what they have to do, because if education concerns the entire society, then someone must lead the transformation. And it's not enough for the education minister to say everybody has a role to play without acknowledging that the lead role is the government, and that includes leading the schools and not being led by the schools. Continuing on the Observer editorial, parents have to remember that education begins at home and so create environments that foster learning. I have no doubt that there are a lot of parents who want to do this for their children. Parents want to see their children succeed in school. How can they do that when schools want to dictate to them rather than have a partnership and a discussion and engage them fully in any decision-making process at the school? But then the Observer says the private sector has to remember the obvious. The future workforce is failing. Those who complain about unskilled graduates must invest in solutions. We agree on that. Partner with schools and provide resources to improve infrastructure and technology. The success of business depends on the success of the education system. And I want you to look at some of the most successful schools in Jamaica right now. You know how they're successful? Because of their alumni. Their alumni invest heavily back into those institutions. If you look at the schools that are more successful and the ones that are struggling, you can see the result of the investment or lack of investment. Finally, the Observer says the community has to stop being passive observers, advocate for better, and hold leaders accountable. This I couldn't agree with more, because the fact that any government official can come and tell us that we should be doing their jobs for them, it shows that we have allowed them to get away with so much that they can be bold enough to say to us, listen, I know that this problem exists, but I want you all to fix it for me. The government, by its own acknowledgement, is telling us that it has known for some time that there's a problem that needs to be addressed. The government, by its own acknowledgement, has failed to address this issue that it has known about for some time. The government is also acknowledging that they know that if this problem continues unaddressed, it is going to have serious implications for Jamaicans and for the Jamaican economy. The government is acknowledging that it is aware of all this and is now handing it over to us, the citizens, to solve it. This is unacceptable. And the Jamaica Observer is right that as a community, we really have to stop being so passive and hold these people accountable. No, we are not going to do your job for you. You are in the position to find solutions to the problem. And if you have a clear direction of how you are going to fix this issue, there are many Jamaicans from all sectors. The private sector will come on board, the schools will be brought into line, and the parents and all the society will get on board. But you have to take the lead. You have to come up with a plan. You have to decide how you're going to implement it, and then people will walk with you. But we're not going to come up with that plan for you. We're not going to do the hard work for you. You are going to have to initiate the solutions for this problem, and then we will work with you. That is how government works, not the other way around.